Good evening, everyone. How's everyone doing tonight? Ooh, we got jammed up there a little bit. Sorry about that. All right, there we go. I got my St. Patrick's Day shirt on. My girlfriend got me. I'm feeling lucky tonight. Glad to see everybody. Let everybody get in here that's coming in. Tonight will be more of a throwback to what the reason I came here to YouTube to begin with, the old serial killer stuff. And the video that you just saw, the intro video done by Grismatically Clever. Anyone that has a YouTube page or really anything, the dude's like a genius. He did Frank's intro video, which is awesome with the helicopter. We're going to stay till right around 9 o'clock tonight. And then I'm personally going to go over to Frank and watch his show tonight. I'm not sure if Kristen's with him or not, probably. A lot has happened in Delphi today that needs some interpretation. And this ain't the channel to come to for interpretation of legal documents. So let me tell you all that now. But being here for about an hour, and I want to get more back to this when I can, maybe even once a week. I can't do a say like used to do Sunday night. Well, with my schedule, we work one day and we're off three. So I work one day of the month once, if that makes sense. It ends up being like 8 days a month, 42 and a half hours a week, but at least once a week to get back. So tonight would be like just a brief overview, kind of an explanation. We're going to hear from Ed Kemper tonight, Jeffrey Dahmer, Gary Ridgway, Dennis Rader, and obviously we're here from John Douglas, who I love. Jim Clemente, who's like John Douglas 2.0, both profilers. There was some overlap there, but John Douglas started all the profiling. And that is the kind of angle that I like to come in on, the psychological stuff, because it's really hard to understand things. Anytime there's anything that I can put into a pertinent case like that we all cover, like Delphi or something, there's a couple instances where I could say, hey, listen, this, could pertain to that or something like that, or even other cases. I also have a couple of nice articles to show you. So we're going to get through it here and try to give you as much as I possibly can. And this will just be like kind of like an introduction. I'm going to talk a little bit about Manson. I did a deep dive on him. I'm going to do more. I could do Manson stuff for 6 months because it's all so bizarre. And the only thing that I know for sure is we don't know the truth about what happened there. It's never been officially declared. Someone might have said it, but we've never heard it officially declared. I could tell you that with a lot of confidence. So let's say hi to everybody. I put a little video together that we're going to go through. There's no sound to it, but there's interviews from these guys, and just a couple things that I want to point out as we go through. So I think that's cool. Instead of me just talking and telling you stories, I'll be able to like let them talk and then maybe comment on it, answer questions if I can, or if anyone has a question that I can't get to or I don't know, I'll find out and I'll go to the experts. I won't make shit up. So let's say hi to everybody. CJK, what is up? Honeybee, how are you? Miranda, hello. Honeybee, not sure how long I could stay. No problem. Thanks for popping in for sure. This account, how are you? Feeling lucky, yeah. A little bit. I'm not Irish at all. Swedish and hunky, as we say here. Rescue all the dogs, how are you? Jinx, as always, is in here. I was talking to Jinx today about some stuff behind the scenes. All right, I think I said hi to everyone that's in here thus far. Anyways, so what I want to just get right into this tonight, because again, I want to keep this to an hour, short and sweet. I'd like to keep all these episodes short and sweet instead of droning on for hours and hours and hit key points and just do more of them. You know what I mean? So instead of doing 5 2-hour episodes, I'd rather do 10 1-hour episodes. But with serial killer shit, I could do 100 6-hour episodes and not be through it all. So let's get to it. Let me show you what I have for you here. I'd like to give you first here, make sure I can find the right one. This video. This was the link to Grizz's video. I'm going to back out of this for a second and show you what I got here. A little video I put together. I just did it today. It's nothing fancy. It's on an unsubscribed channel. Let's see. There it is right there. when they get into copyrights and things like that. Although I name some people out and give people credit, things like that. So let's make sure we're up to the page here on the right thing. And I'm sharing the right thing with you guys. All right, let's make sure that this comes up. Yeah, like if you can, share if you like it. I'm trying to make sure we're up. Okay, here we go. Okay, so what we have here, this is Jim Clemente. He's going to open this up, and he's going to give a brief kind of like 2-minute, if you will, dissertation on profiling and how it started and what's it mean. You know, just a very, very brief overview. This was done by Wired.com, a really cool interview. So I might stop it a little bit here and there. And I did, you'll see in this video, I added words for emphasis that I think is important. So without further ado, let's get it. This is Jim Clemente. Jim Clemente and his brother both worked in the FBI. Jim Clemente, 2 really cool facts about Jim Clemente. Jim Clemente helped catch the DC snipers. He said it was 2 different snipers by the language that they used in letter. One of the things that they called the paper, the press. So he knew that was a thing that had to be somebody old, probably even older than me. Melvo's or the other guy's dead now, Muhammad, but he'd probably be 55 now or something. So he was, he was older at the time. And if you go back, 15 years, whatever it was. And then the other stuff that was used, Mr. Policeman, was a Jamaican thing. So he's like, this is a young Jamaican kid. And sure enough, it was. The other thing that's really cool amongst a million things about Jim Clemente is he's the reason that they quit doing the witch towers. I don't even know what you want to call it at the Guantanamo Bay, where they make the prisoners get naked and stand up. The prisoners were given all kind of information because they were being tortured. Problem was it was all bullshit. They just didn't want to not be tortured anymore. If you ever saw the military movie about Vietnam, and I don't know if it was Tigerland or I don't know if it was Full Metal Jacket, I can't remember what it was, but they were teaching people to shock the Viet Cong's balls for information. They would hook up batteries from their radios to them. And one of the guys were like, listen, they'll tell you the baseball scores if you want, but they're not going to be accurate. They're going to tell you anything that try to get them to stop doing what they're doing. But anyways, that's Jim Clemente. Two cool things about him of a million. As you could tell, I definitely fanboy over him. So let's get into it.
We have an amazing volume of institutional knowledge about these offenders, and it tells us how they killed and why they killed, and it helps us to hunt them down. Criminal profiling is basically reverse engineering a crime. We look at the victimology, the choice of the victims. We look at the crime scene. We look at the organization level, and then pre and post offense behavior.
Organization level, organized, disorganized. I'm going to explain that a little bit tonight, but that's 2 episodes, I think, in itself. Some killers show both. Ted Bundy showed both. Early on, he was very organized. Chi Omega, very disorganized.
And together, all those things tell us the kind of person who committed the crime. Victimology is the study of the victim, their life, their desires, their education, their daily routine. Because an offender picks a particular victim at a particular place, at a particular time, in a particular manner, for a particular purpose.
Victimology is very important, and it's hard when it's a stranger that kills them, because the victimology might not help. So if it was a situation where if it was a blitz attack, someone walking down the street, those people are hard to find. Israel Keys was very hard to find because he had no victimology except for the one lady that caught him, Samantha Koenig.
And all those choices leak out information about the offender, about their skills and abilities, about their desires, and they can lead us right back to the offender. The crime location can tell us a lot. Did the crime occur on a farm in the middle of Iowa, where the only potential witnesses are a bunch of cows and pigs? Or did it happen in New York City's Times Square, where at any given moment there may be 50 to 100,000 potential eyewitnesses?
So you've already drawn the parallels yourself, right? What I'm going to field in Iowa, Adelphi. So that's very important to if the FBI profilers that happened there in that particular area. And as you hear many locals saying, I'm going to have opportunity here in about a month. It's hard to find, they say, unless you know exactly where it is. So that's why they, we were here in local. And I'm sure anything the FBI had, I shouldn't say I'm sure because I haven't seen it, but I'm sure they did a profile. I'm sure that they're going to include that in there. Like, this guy had to be from here because this is a hard place to find. So the location is huge. It's another huge piece that they use.
Pulling off a crime in either of those locations tells you a lot about the offender. At the crime scene, we look at the offender's behavior. How much time did they spend there? What was their interaction with the victims? And what was their criminal sophistication level? The choice of weapons that an offender uses at a crime scene reveals a tremendous amount of information about them. Did the offender use a gun and kill somebody from a distance? Or did they get up close and personal and use a knife? That's a different kind of person who typically isn't getting
this account I'm reading on my phone. I'm sorry you don't like Jim. I could see where if you think he's a little arrogant or a little cocky, yeah, I could see that. Let me tell you, it's maybe not a good parallel, but in the fire service, maybe I have a guy on my crew that some guys think he's cocky, he's arrogant, he's this or that, and he is a little bit. But you know what? I'd much rather have somebody in this line of work be a little cocky or arrogant than second guess themselves. And I'm not saying that, whatever you're drawing from at this account, maybe you had something or something particular that you don't like. But there's people that I like that I don't agree with, and there's people that I agree with that I don't like, if that makes sense. So you're well within your rights. What up, Lake Michigan? How are you? Bought a victimology. I'm sorry, I'm not putting this up. I'm reading it. This is this account. I bought a victimology book and like the true crime. And I'm so excited. That's cool. Let me know what book that is. Yeah, Miranda Lee. That's the PA accent. Let me know what book that is. This account. That's very interesting.
Engaged in different kinds of profession than somebody who will not get up close and personal. Next, we look at the offender's organization level.
He breaks it down briefly here, really good, but we can go days about this. The organized versus disorganized, and the killers that have both traits.
Types of offenders that we see are on a spectrum between organized and disorganized. The organized offender will plan it in advance, fantasize about committing the crime, and then bring all the implements necessary to commit the crime, and then take them away with him after the crime. Whereas the disorganized offender is impulsive. They don't plan the crimes out in advance. They may have lowered inhibitions because of drug or alcohol use, and they basically pick up the implements along the way and may leave them behind.
Real quick on this. This is Ted Bundy for me. This is early on. Ted Bundy had drinking problems, but it really got bad at the end, and he got enraged. So early on, he would specifically, he'd have a ruse where it'd have the oh, I got a broken arm. Can you help me? He's a good-looking guy, well-spoken. He looks at a pretty girl. Can you help me put my sailboat in the car? Sure, I'll give him a hand. This guy looks totally harmless. Those are the scary people, right? The psychopathy of Bundy was, it was bizarre because he wasn't abused as a child. He had a strict father or grandfather. He found out at about age 13 or 14 that his grandpap was his dad and his sister was his mom. And I guess that just blew his mind. And he was mean to animals too, though. So let's look at BTK organized, the Night Stalker unorganized, right? Night Stalker showed up. Sometimes he took a gun, he'd use things in the house, stove phone cords and stuff like that. Ted Bundy, or as John Douglas says his name, Ted Bundy, you picked up a stick or a big piece of like fire kindling. Fire kindling probably ain't the word. It was almost like a log. And he brutalized the girls in Chi Omega with that. He wasn't taking things. So he went from a guy who would act like he had a broken arm and put his arm in plaster, and to a guy that was, just be drunk and doing things like that. So it's so bizarre how it all works. So bizarre. What's up, Kelt? How are you? Get back to the video.
Leaving a lot of forensic evidence for law enforcement to find. If an offender doesn't have a very high skill level in terms of getting access to victims, they'll pick victims who lead very high-risk lives, prostitutes and drug addicts, whereas a very sophisticated offender will be able to acquire victims in the privacy and security of their own homes.
Something I used to get confused with real quick, high risk, low risk. High risk, low risk is based on the victim, not on the killer. So it would be low risk, so to speak, to go after a drug addict or a working girl, and it would be high risk to try to abduct someone from their house. That's not when these guys talk, and these guys and girls talk. It's about the victim. So a low-risk victim is a 6-month-old baby who's never out of their parents' sight. It'd be very hard to take someone like that. But if you have a working girl that's on the streets, that's on drugs, she doesn't want to be there. Nobody ever woke up and said, I want to be a drug addict. I want to be professional on the street. But at the same time, if she goes missing for a couple of days, people aren't going to be in an uproar as opposed to a 6-month-old baby. So I used to screw that up all the time.
It takes a much different level of criminal sophistication to be able to accomplish those two different crimes.
Why did you keep the heads? Why did you cut them off, and why did you keep them?
Something out of my childhood. I could put it on an incident. I mean, my father chopping the heads off of our 2 pet chickens and my mother insisting that I eat them for dinner.
This is Ed Kemper, guys. If you don't know, Ed Kemper was in the show Mindhunters. He was called the co-ed killer. Ed Kemper's about 6'9".
You know, we could say it was something that simple. I don't think it was. Now, my dad heads out back with a hatchet. I got on my bike and I tried to stop it. I remember that. I got on the bike, rode around the block. I was crying. I haven't talked about that for a lot of years. I'm sure that may have implemented something, that may have gotten something rolling, but along fantasy lines. But it took a lot of years of development along those lines to really get off.
Maybe all we can do.
So fantasy, what do we, they just talk about if you were watching Clemente and someone said he looked like a gambler, and I agree. Carol Murray said Coach Kev said he would end the show at 9. So Frank, yeah, absolutely. I probably would only have went 20 minutes over. Frank's my guy. Frank got a lot of good stuff tonight, and hopefully the Odinist didn't mess with Frank's sound. I mentioned that last night when he first came on. He had some issues. Like maybe the Odinist got to his headphones. I don't know. And then I fell asleep in my chair and missed the show, but I caught a lot of it today. But there's a lot going on in Delphi, and I'm interested too. I asked Frank 2 or 3 questions today, and I'm hoping he's going to answer tonight. But yeah, absolutely. Any of my friends I'd do that for. Frank, I consider a friend. So thanks for saying that, Carol. Okay, so we just heard Ed Kemper tell the story about his dad's cutting head off chicken. Real quick about Ed Kemper. If you don't know, Ed Kemper would behead women like literally in his driveway, and that's what the beginning part of that video was. And he'd bury their heads up to his mom's window, facing up, looking at his mom. His mom was the reason that he killed in a crazy, insane way. Once he finished her, he didn't have to kill anymore. He actually turned himself in. So Ed Kemper, in his IQ of like 160, very intelligent guy, used to send John Douglas cards. Robert Ressler was sent a painting of John Wayne Gacy, of a clown painting. I mean, these guys really thought they were friends with these guys, but they had to build rapport. Like I said about Jim Clemente in Guantanamo Bay, changing the way that all worked. Rapport. And John Douglas talks about, man, my insides are crawling, but my outsides are like, yeah, that's funny. But this is a little bit about Jeffrey Dahmer here, this next part.
Is what Lionel Dahmer did. Look back and try to see what went wrong. As a young child at the beach with his parents, Jeffrey Dahmer discovered a dead crab. He examined it with a child's curiosity, but later the curiosity grew into something unthinkable.
All I know is that I wanted to see what the insides of these animals looked like.
Shame.
There may have been some violence involved, some underlying subconscious feelings of violence.
Sex work.
It was a compulsion. Became a compulsion.
Jeffrey Dahmer got bigger, and so did his compulsion to look at the insides of living things. He began to kill them, satisfying powerful urges that he didn't understand.
In 9th grade, in biology.
Real quick question. Let me get Kelpwood and Coach Kev. Do you think Kemper just said what he thought the interview wanted to hear? No, not Ed Kemper. John Wayne Gacy did that. I think Dennis Rader does that to a certain extent, but Ed Kemper, not all the killers were like that. Ted Bundy did that for a long time, but not all the time did he lie. That's a really good question. I think Ed Kemper was genuine. Ed Kemper wanted to be a cop, but he couldn't be a cop because he was crazy, but he was also too tall. You want some tall cops? I'll take some tall cops. But he, killed his grandparents. So that they were like, well, we don't know about you there, Ed. But I think that he did, but not everyone does. John Douglas talks about that too. And a lot of these other guys, I keep saying John Douglas because I love him so much, but a lot of these other guys and gals do it. And they'll talk about that and they'll say, we know this guy's full of shit, but every so often he gives us something, or they'll play the victim or something. Kemper blamed a lot of things, but he always came back and said, listen, I knew what I was doing was wrong. It was just like, I couldn't stop.
Biology class, we had the usual dissection of fetal pigs, and I took the remains of that home and kept the skeleton of it. And I just started branching out, dogs, cats.
So the McDonald triad, enuresis, bedwetting, especially in a later age, or especially if you were, I'm going to say housebroken every time, especially if you were potty trained. But the tip of it, and John Douglas says this, and they all say this, the cruelty to animals is just practice for humans. And if you, not that everyone has cruelty to animals does that, but if you have cruelty to animals and they're really going out about it, like Dahmer talks about here, and they're doing really vicious things, and they're killing neighborhood cats and dogs that they know, they're going to kill a human being. I mean, the odds are heavily in that favor if you had the fire setting for control and the bedwetting, which a lot of times would go back to some kind of molestation or abuse. Not always, but if you could put those three things together,
I suppose it could have turned into a normal hobby like taxidermy, but it didn't. It veered off into.
Jeffrey Dahmer was never going to be a normal taxidermy, and you don't kill neighborhood animals and become a normal taxidermist. So that's just how the guy's out there, right?
Into this.
What you were going to do with the knife in your head to your mother.
Okay, next we have, this is Gary Ridgway. Gary Ridgway is, there's arguments of it, but he could be the most prodigious series or serial killer in the country, upwards of 80. Not really sure, couldn't find them all, doesn't even remember them all. Mom issues. This is about mom issues. These people all have mom issues. They were either neglected or abused by their mother. Their mother showed favoritism to another sibling. Mother kicked you out, let the other kids live there. Ed Kemper's mom used to make him stay in the basement because she was afraid he was going to rape his sisters. And like, why would a mom think that? And you know, Ed Kemper, I don't know where he thought that, but he was taking heads off Barbie dolls and torturing them in the basement. So maybe it had something to do with it. But Gary Ridgway, for me, this ties everything together. Okay. You have violence and sex linking at a young age with a mother issue. With Gary Ridgway, the violence and sex linked were his mother. And this is why he hated women, and he killed in the neighborhood of 80 women. Gary Ridgway, the Green River Killer.
Cut her throat. So she wouldn't stop
Talk about his mom.
Degrading me and putting me in I couldn't remember things, and that was the only way I could think of hurting her to get her to stop.
When did you think about having sex with your mother?
When 14 or 15, I think.
Tell me about that.
14 or 15, he makes this connection. He says in another interview that he starts having these different feelings, or 5th or 6th grade. So I think that he's super embarrassed by this. He knows this is wrong. This might be the only thing in the world he's embarrassed by. He might not be embarrassed by killing 80 women, but he's embarrassed about this, in my opinion. So I think that 14 or 15, I would have to say it's probably 12 or 13. It would probably jive with what he said in the other interview, 5th or 6th grade. But just think about how a human being has to get to this point. You know, mom would belittle him and stuff, but she was a drinker. But, you know, I don't know. I'm sure a lot of kids go through that and do not end up like Gary Ridgway.
About the same time frame.
Mm-hmm. I'd see her out sunbathing, and I feel that she, you know, she'd be good to have sex with, but she's my mother, and I never really. She's the only woman in my life, other than neighborhood girls, but so I get fantasies of having sex with her and wanting to, but being restricted on that part.
Explain to me, fantasies and restricted on that part. Your
Well,
word.
because she's my mother, it's not right for having sex with your mother.
Best fantasy?
So he knows that that's wrong, but he doesn't care. And this is Dennis Rader, BTK. They caught him with from familial genealogy through one of them websites. They found out who his daughter was. His daughter had a medical procedure done at the college he was at. They were able to get that. There was some talk about Richard Allen's medical records today. So this was Kansas. They were able to get samples from her medical procedure and say, this is the daughter of the guy we're looking for. And then he was nice enough to send a floppy disk because he asked the cops. All these years he gets away. He's smarter than them. He's better than them. He's beating them with all these things. Then he comes back. Someone does a news show about it. And he admits, I couldn't stay away. It's 10 years since the BTK or something like that. And he starts sending letters. He starts leaving things at Home Depot. He left something in a park. It was a girl. It was tied up like the Otero girl in his first killing, attached to a pipe. And it was schematically perfect to what he had done. And then he sends his floppy disk, and the police look it up right away, and he's like president of this church. Another thing you'll find out is a lot of the people that are serial killers, or their parents were deeply religious. They had a deeply religious home. So not all, the organized ones, I should say, the disorganized ones were usually mistreated. Maybe their parents were religious. They were usually neglected. And usually if it's rich parents, they're abused or beaten. And if it's poor parents, a lot of times it's just kind of a neglect thing. But along with the neglect, there also could be a lot of abuse too. So that's not always an exact perfect science in there. But let's hear what BTK has to say here. This is Dennis Rader.
I started working out this fantasy in my mind. And once that potential,
what kind of killer is Dennis Rader? We all know this. I would think we all know this, right? You don't need me to tell you this. If you're on YouTube watching true crime, we heard fantasy, right? Organized. He's planning all this out. This guy is meticulous. One of my favorite words ever, and I never knew what it really meant until John Douglas said it, but he said, I'm not sure if he said it about Rader, it was Rader, or it could have been Ted Kaczynski. It might have been Ted Kaczynski, is he's fastidious, just fanatical about details. How do I look? How's my hair? How's this? How's that? Just fastidious. This is Dennis Rader to a T.
To become a fantasy, I could just loop it over.
Very organized killer. Fantasy, I forgot to tell you. But you guys already knew that. You didn't need me for that.
Bed at night, thinking about this person, the events and how it's going to happen, and it become a real, almost like a picture show. I want to go ahead and produce it, direct it, and go through with it, no matter what the costs were.
Almost like a picture show. He wants to produce and direct. Like he has a movie in his head. That's another sign of organized killers. Now, disorganized killers might have visions in their head. They just might lose their shit. But this guy has seen this 500 times. He's played this out over and over and over again in his head. And once he does it, then he goes home and he plays it out over and over and over again in his head. As we get two more down in the video list, we talk about trophies that they take and how they relive their crimes with those trophies by going back to the scene.
The consequences. It was going to happen one way.
Yeah, what was the idea proposal there?
Let me just pause this real quick so you see. I have an article about the difference between staging and posing, which is huge. Where have we heard the word staging before? Where have we all seen that? Oh, yes, that's right. In the Ron Logan, the FBI search warrant, not the probation search warrant. Right away when I saw staging, I'm like, staging is to throw off. That's like the FBI definition of staging. Posing. So you go into posing, and then there's a couple other posings. There's posing, sexual posing for gratification of the killer. There's posing like Jack the Ripper to shock and awe the people that saw him. People do that now for first responders, police, fire, EMS. Even if you know that someone's neighbor is going to find them or the paper boy, you want to shock them. That's like another laugh, a sick gas that you're going to get. So this is the rest of the article. On the other hand, if the crime scene alterations only serve the fantasy needs of the offender, they are considered part of the signature and then referred to as posing. Again, signature is something that they don't have to do to commit the crime. It's something that they are compelled to do. There's a compulsion to do this. And apparently that's what some people or a lot of people have said with Delphi. right? I've heard the term budding serial killer from law enforcement somewhere. I don't know if it was written down, but I heard that. Why would they do that? So was it actually posing, or was it actually staging, or was it posing? The FBI said it was staging. I got to believe what the FBI says, right? Or was that warrant written for a reason that way? To get what they wanted to get, but not to give things away? I don't know. Then he talked about the owedness. Was that staged to look like owedness, to try to waft the blame somewhere else? So it's all very bizarre. I just want everyone to know the difference for your own work that you do on whatever case. Staging to deceive, posing to as a signature would be some kind of sick fantasy or some kind of get off for these crazy fucks.
It was just a way to exhibit control, the way I wanted them to look, and to accentuate the physique.
So Dahmer's saying he wants to exert control and accentuate the physique. He'd always bend guys backwards. He liked the chest and the stomach area. Another guy that likes stomach area. Not that anything's linked to anything there, but Dahmer was another guy too that was just so never got upset. He was a disorganized and organized killer. He was more disorganized, and he really should have been caught years before. So there was obviously some police snafus there. He should have been caught. I mean, the guy's running a chainsaw in his apartment, and he doesn't get caught, right? I mean, you turn your music up too loud in the apartments or calling the police. Here's the man. This is John Douglas, Robert Ressler, Dr. Ann Burgess. If you ever see the show Mindhunter, I highly recommend it on Netflix. There's a couple scenes shot in my hometown, because they said we need a town to make it look like it's 1984. And hey, McKeesport, Pennsylvania kind of still looks like 1984, some of the downtown. So they were there for that. But this is John Douglas. To me, John Douglas is the authority on profiling. He's kind of the guy that started it, like I said, with the other two.
The thing about Manson was, he did a great job in the show, the Mindhunter show, is he's a little guy. And now I'm 6'2". Now, what these guys are doing, and when they perpetrate their crimes too, right. It's all about power and control. I have to give them this sense of power control over me. Even Kemper, as big as
Miranda Lee, Dahmer was a homosexual. He knew it at a young age. The first kid that he killed with the weights at home. I don't know if Dahmer, some people like John Wayne Gacy he's probably bisexual, but he never wanted to be called homosexual. Oh, I'm not that. Well, you clearly are. So he was fighting against that. I don't think Dahmer ever fought against his homosexuality. He just wanted to see what the inside of things look like. And then he had lovers that had left him. So that's when he would start drilling the acid in people's head. He wanted them to stay alive, and he didn't want them to leave. So anyway, that was a good question there, though. Back to John Kelly.
As big as he is, I have to kind of go back and lean back. With Manson, I knew damn well that he was going to probably want to stand over me. So we made sure we had a credenza in the interview environment so that during the interview, what he could do.
This is a clip from Mindhunter. I don't know the actor's name, but he is tremendous. The guy that plays Ed Kemper in Mindhunter is tremendous. I can't talk enough about Mindhunter. Can you tell I like it? And so they set the chair up, and they kind of expected him to do something like this, where he got to sit up over top of you and look down. And this was his thing. So they help with interviews too. They do a ton of stuff with interviews, profile, questioning people, court, all that type of stuff. So here's the rest of what he talks about.
Is get up on top of the credenza. Why did I know that? Because when he was at the George Spahn Ranch teaching his followers, he would sit up on top of a rock and preach to them or play his guitar to them. So he comes walking in, little guy, real charismatic, but he would like us. Unlike some of the interviews you may see on YouTube of him, well, he'll just manipulate reporters like up.
If you watch Manson with a news reporter, he does whatever he wants to do. That interview goes his way. Manson controls. I've not seen an interview with anybody that Manson did not control that interview. Even if that reporter thought they were leading the dance, Charlie was leading the dance one way, shape, or form.
Up and down, and journalists. We had the facts of the case. We knew the case, and what's weird to probably somebody watching, we'll be laughing with these people. We'll make light of certain things. We're trying to project this false empathy, but I'm on a mission is to gain knowledge and information. And the only way I can't be doing that is, oh, they should have executed you. You're
What John Douglas
disgusting.
is talking about here was the same thing. Jim Clemente, building rapport. Miranda Lee said Cameron Britton. That's the name, played Ed Kemper in Mindhunter. Yeah. I really can't speak enough about Mindhunter, but he's saying you got to build rapport. So even though they're laughing with him and stuff, and if you watch the show, the Richard Speck interview, they kind of got in trouble for, but they got what they needed out of him to help prevent, or maybe if someone's into 3, they're not going to make it to 9 because they figured this little bit out about it. So I think the means justify the ends.
No. I have to, walk in the shoes of these individuals. So Manson comes in, sure enough, sits up on top of the fence, and now we're like the followers watching him. And he's going to lecture us, but I soon found out with him, he was never busted for being a killer. He's not. People have heard him a serial killer. He wasn't a serial killer. He may have killed. They never got him on it.
Manson wasn't a serial killer. He probably killed 2 people that we know of. Not that we know of, but they weren't. It was an act of business. So, but he sent his followers where he sent them. I'm going to do another deep dive because the second worst character, probably third worst character after Manson and Tex Watson in that whole saga, believe it or not, in my opinion, is Vincent Bugliosi. When you hear the shit that he did prior to the Manson case and how he even got picked for that case, I mean, it's all so bizarre. So bizarre.
On a homicide. They got him on conspiracy, but he was a fantastic manipulator. And he wasn't an attractive guy. He was, just kind of would mesmerize you, speaking with him.
Police obtain a search warrant.
Now we're going to start getting and talking the trophies, and the video is almost over, so I'm going to get back into the chat, and then we'll hack that all up. But this is Joel Rifkin, if you would, the original Long Island serial killer. And there's still some question that was there overlap between him and Huerman. It sounds like they probably might have been operating a little bit at the same time, but I don't know if anything that maybe he did will get put on Huerman or vice versa. But it's very interesting. Joel Rifkin talks about the things that they take, and listen to some of the things that they take. It's bizarre, but all this is bizarre, right?
Rifkin's mother's house. They search his bedroom and discover scores of items that he collected from his victims.
When he was alone and he felt the need to relive these
experiences. This part right here explains why they take their trophies. If you ever watch the movie The Lovely Bones, which that's a movie that kind of like fucked me up. I've seen it twice. There's a scene in that movie where that killer's in the basement holding on to her little pendant thing, and he could relive things in the moment by smelling that, by touching that, by tasting that. Here's an explanation of why they take trophies.
Experiences, he would take these items and they would remind him of the crime, and he would relive that sexual pleasure.
Driver's licenses, jewelry, earrings, AIDS medication. There was just a trove of evidence which directly linked him to so many murders. And a lot of these murders the police were not even aware of.
So these guys, and to do this, are so smart and sophisticated, some of them, but they still take these trophies and these trinkets with them. It's a compulsion. And they know if they get caught with them, they are dead to rights. Dead to rights. But they can't help themselves. That's why they go back to the scene. I said that probably a year ago now. Richard Allen or not, I think Richard Allen, I'm probably about 85% Richard Allen's a guy. But the killer of Libby and Abby, if they lived in Delphi, I can almost guarantee they went back to that scene. They didn't go back there to look for anything or see if they left anything. They went back there to relive it. That's too close to home. It's a compulsion. It's a compulsion, man. It's like, there's a piece of gluten-free cheesecake in the refrigerator, and I'm not supposed to eat it till tomorrow. But every time I open up the refrigerator, there's a piece of gluten-free cheesecake looking at me. It ain't going to make it till tomorrow. It's a compulsion. I'm going to eat it. But these guys can't help it. The last thing I'm going to play for you here is I'm going to jump back in. I'm going to answer all your questions, or you guys, or whatever I can do. It's a call from. They're going to see a bunch of. You think that the Reddit's crazy with letters everywhere, R-A, B-H, B-A Baracus, whoever else. This is Richard D'Angelo. Richard D'Angelo arrested and jailed, a Golden State Killer. early on, he was known as the East Area Rapist first. Then he was known as the original Night Stalker. So if you ever see the term ear-ons, it's East Area Rapist, original Night Stalker. So they at first weren't sure because there was all kind of serial killers operating in California in those years. And he was a cop in a couple of different communities. He ended up getting caught again, familiar DNA. I'm sure I'm saying that word wrong and I'm butchering it. But like foliage, I can't say that either. But this is an actual phone call that he made to one of his victims that he raped, and he called her after it. This guy would get off. He'd take the husband and go to a gun, and he had the same initial MO as Richard Ramirez. He would either shoot the husband or control the husband with a gun first. Richard Ramirez a lot of times would just walk in and shoot them in 80 and want nothing to do with the husband. So he would tie him. He'd get his jollies off tying the husband up, and he would set 5 or 6 dishes on the husband's back. He would go in the next room so the husband can hear him and do what he would do with the wife. And one of the things that got him caught is he had a 1/2-inch home wrecker. All the women that he assaulted all said, yeah, man, this guy, he had a tiny penis. He must have driven one of them big trucks with the real big tires, you know. They didn't say that. I added that. But so it's almost funny at the end of the day, like you little jerk, you and your little, 1/2-inch home wrecker that you got. But it was one of the things that linked them. And if he would hear them dishes move, he would say, I'm going to kill your wife and come in here and kill you. But this is an actual recorded phone call that he made. So that's basically the gist of that. Let me stop that. I don't know if I'll get these articles up tonight or not. If not, I'll share them in my community group. But I'm going to get back to your questions. I just thought it was cool, instead of just me talking tonight, giving you examples of things like that. I mean, I could go forever with that type of stuff. Oh, yeah, it's an excellent book. It's really, I have it back here, I think, right? Yeah, Mindhunter. Now, I did watch the show before I read the book, and I buy the paperbacks. What do I need the hard? We might have displaying them. You know what I mean? I guess I am displaying them, so maybe you should change that and start buying the hardcovers. But anyways, it's a fantastic book. Shane likes it. It is Kelt. The producer, I forget what his name was, didn't have time or something. Detective Bill Tench, who's Robert Ressler, was just in another movie, and I can't think of what it was. I hadn't seen it yet, but I was like, oh, I'll check that out. Miranda, bingo again. Absent father. Yeah. That's huge. It's absolutely huge. It's in the whole recipe for it. Again, I don't think anyone decides at one point, hey, I think I'm going to be a serial killer. I think I'm going to be a drug addict. I think I'm going to go walk the streets for money, or I'm going to do this or do that. You kind of end up there. You just kind of end up there. Yeah, that's interesting. And you see the bedwetting and stuff, like all that's woven in there. Really nice. The director. Yeah, I know a lot of them had some stuff going on. Let's see what else we got. Yeah, a lot of people would like that to have another season. I'd love it to go on. They actually it was supposed to go up until they caught BTK. So they were going to cover all the way up to, like, what was it? Whenever they caught him, was it the late 90s or early 2000s when they finally caught him? That's why they were showing him at the beginning of that. Then they take the case, and it's very early on in the case. And then Robert Ressler or Bill Tench actually goes there and talks to the guy. And they go to the houses and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, it kills them inside too. John Douglas talk about that. Like his skin would be crawling, but he had a job to do. Yeah, Rifkin got caught driving, if I'm not mistaken, without a license plate with a dead body in the back, went on a police chase, crashed through a pole, and the cops were like, as soon as he wrecked, we had this terrible smell. And you know, hopefully no one here has to smell it unless it's like job related. But if you smell a dead body once, you're going to be able to smell it for every time. Every time. Dude. Well, I don't know. If you're into this, it could be, you know, scarier because it's real. But you know what I don't like is movies that are kind of made about serial killers. I like documentaries. I watched all the Bundy stuff, and it was okay. The Richard Ramirez documentary was good. The Night Stalker movies, I remember from the 80s as a kid watching them. They'd be on like, you know, you'd have to watch maybe an hour on one Sunday and an hour the next Sunday or whatever. And that was kind of scary, but that's all we had back then. I couldn't just look up documentaries. No, Miranda Lee. You shooting your shot. Rescue all dogs can't say rural. I have the worst time saying, what was it, foliage? If you ever watched my Kimmy Krim videos, well, there you go. Exchange emails and I think this is the part we were talking about, Joseph D'Angelo's little half-inch home wrecker. But it is. It linked them. Hugely, yeah. But he did that a lot. That one was recorded, but there were several cases where he would do it after the fact. I don't know if he ever did it before the fact or not. And it's he would get off on that. He would just, yeah, he would get off on the torture and the fear in people. Some of these guys, like Ed Kemper, just basically like killing a girl was just a means to an end. You know, he just wanted the body. He didn't want to do that. Some people like to watch, if you would, the light go out in people's eyes. Some people get off on that. And, yeah, he was just horribly vicious, absolutely vicious. There's a documentary, I think it's on HBO Max. I think it's called I'll Be Gone in the Night. And it was by Patton Oswalt, the comedian, his wife. And I can't think of her name right now, but it's fantastic. She was a true crime writer, had a blog. She was like what we are, into this stuff. And then, unfortunately, she had an overdose of prescription pills. I think they were prescribed to her. It wasn't like a suicide attempt. She was having trouble sleeping and unfortunately passed away. But her work, and Gary Holes worked on it too, or what? Gary Holes, Robert Holes, whatever his name is, Paul Holes. Listen to me. Paul Holes worked on it with her. And that was like the first case where they used the DNA and they used like a 23andMe type thing to capture people with that DNA type. And then they were able to get it down to, I think, a Kleenex out of his garbage. Once you throw your stuff for garbage, it's public. Not that you can necessarily spill it everywhere, but oh, sorry, Shay. No more comments read out loud. Oh, that's what it is. Yeah, Kelt. He plays Fritz von Erich. I haven't seen that movie yet, The Iron Claw. I'm a big wrestling fan, especially old wrestling. Not as much today, but yes. Hey, did you guys see that Mike Tyson's going to fight Logan Paul? It's a real fight happening in July on Netflix. You could bet on it. Logan Paul is actually a favorite, like a minus 500 or something. So if you bet $500, you win 100. If you bet 100 on Mike Tyson, you win 350 or something like that. That's a real fight. I don't know Mike Tyson, but I also know that Father Time is undefeated. If Logan Paul could probably just stay away from him. I knew what you meant, Miranda. That was Robert Wrestler. Supposed to be Robert Wrestler. Yeah, me too. We didn't have that class in high school. I went to school with a couple kids that turned out later to be killers, not serial killers, but oh yeah, they do. Israel Keys, he just wanted to be put to death. They wouldn't do it, so he killed himself. But they they admit that's just, I don't know. I would think the Zodiac was like that, whoever that was, whether it was Post or not, or whoever. It seemed to me that was the kind of person that liked that. And then Raider enjoyed it too. Raider enjoyed how clean he killed, but he did enjoy the kill. It wasn't always, he did things at different scenes and stuff like that, but it wasn't always, yeah. But just to think to the mindset that you have to get into from whatever happened to you in your life to enjoy killing animals and then killing people. If that kept going on, what I think they were going to do, this would be my guess, is he would display all the signs, but somehow Holden and Bill would have been able to pull him back and we know what these signs are, but since we know what we do and this is what our job is, we were able to stop it. That would be my guess, and that would make it like a good story. But I don't know for sure. But it was either going to go that way or he was going to be a serial killer, one of the two. I don't think there was going to be any middle ground. Yeah, it's hard to explain, but I can tell the difference. Like if there's a dead animal, I can't say, oh, it's a squirrel or it's a raccoon or it's an alligator, it's a camel. That smells like a dead animal. Dead humans, it's just a little bit different. I don't know why, and I think that most people that have encountered that, something's been sitting there for a while, it will tell you the same thing. Great. Read them all. I read all the books that I wanted to find. I was still going to get to read some more, obviously. I'll never stop it. Also, that's where I brought to YouTube. I was like, well, I need to find more stuff out. And you go to YouTube and you just type in friggin' serial killers. And then, my wheelhouse for me personally is Richard Ramirez, the Green River Killer. I could tie that back to my childhood. Remember them Sunday Night Movie, The Night Stalker. I remember the special that was on America's Most Wanted about the Green River Killer. Distinctively remember that as a kid and being like, he was killing women in Washington, but it was still scary. I have a river close to my house, and as a kid, whatever that year that was, I was probably maybe only 8 or 10. Maybe I shouldn't have been watching it. But so for me, that, I know a lot about Dennis Rader. I know a lot about Manson, but I can tell you what, there's so much to know about that crazy bastard and his crazy followers and everything else that was going on at the time. The other book I have up here, Operation Chaos, the red book, is another book that's just absolutely nuts about Manson and about the killings and the LA and the CIA and MK Ultra. And it just, I-70, I don't know a whole lot about. Was that the Strangler? Was that the guy with the beard? Or was that the guy? Is that Ohio? So I don't even know enough about it, Chris, to even, if I would see a picture or something, I'm like, oh, okay, that guy. I know a very limited I know a very limited amount about him. Easy for me to say. One of the things that John Douglas says is, in his opinion, there's between 35 and 55 active serial killers operating at any one time. It's harder to do now because the cops talk to each other, because all the technology, because of CODIS, because of the fingerprint database, all that stuff. But it doesn't mean they're not doing it. And it doesn't mean in Israel Keys, if he never would have did what he did in Alaska, kidnapped Samantha Koenig, killed her, drove her, went to the Southwest, flew to the Southwest, then drove through the Southwest, used her car different places and got caught, they would have never put the other murders together because they didn't know they were linked. One's in Maine, one's over here, different MO, no victimology. So that could be happening right now, and we don't know. There's interesting stories. There's a channel called The Lore Lodge, and I think the guy's based out of Pittsburgh. He does a bunch of really cool, he doesn't do lives. He just sits back and gives you a story. But there's like 411 people missing from the national parks, which is, I don't have time to investigate that, but that's an interesting thing too, just based on what we were kind of saying. So who knows? But certainly it's possible. He made the call to elicit that response to put more pain on his victim. It just is. He's a bag of pus. He's just a horrible, horrible person. And keep in mind, he was a police officer when doing some of this. And if you ever listen to what is his name? The guy, he's out in the desert, has the dog. He'll do stuff out of his van. Jim. I follow his channel. He has the detective on there that encountered him. I don't know if that's the guy that he shot. He like shot him in the face and got away. And a lot of the places would always have dogs, but they wouldn't bark. So there was some question, was he using some kind of tranquilizer for the dogs? They were checking the dogs for certain things, but they said, well, you were only checking them for this. You weren't checking them for that. So this dude had a whole thing. Hope McElherney. Yeah, that's the name. Great actor. Like him too. He kind of reminds me of Rex Ryan, the old football coach on ESPN now. I never got to watch him back in the day, being up here in the Northeast and in Pittsburgh. In about 2 minutes, I'm going to get out of here, guys. I encourage you all to go over to Frank's channel and see what the hell is going on with these Delphi things, because I myself want to know. I was like, it was Northeast. We were WWF back then. So I didn't get to see a whole lot. ESPN sometimes would have like AWA on, and it'd be weird times here. But as a kid that, didn't care about staying up, I definitely want to see that movie. Account. If you don't mind, let me know if that book. You can even comment on one of my, if you don't want to email me, Kevlar148@hotmail.com. Just comment on a thing somewhere on one of my videos or one of my community posts, the name of that book. I'd like to check it out. I-70. I'm gonna have to look into I-70. Oh, it hasn't been found. I'm definitely gonna have to look into it. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Yeah, the police thought it was him. I don't know if he ever admitted to it. Raider has cancer. I'm never happy for anyone to have cancer, but the universe kind of takes care of things. I remember that. I remember when Texas tornado. I remember the match. I saw the video where the dude takes his boot off and he doesn't have a foot. That's how tough Kerry Von Erich was. The guy didn't have a foot and he was wrestling, and he tried to hide it so he could continue to wrestle. But anyways, guys, I'm going to get ready to get out of here. I want to start just getting back to this. I ain't going to, other stuff, whatever dictates me to do. What I'm called to do, I'll do. But this is my wheelhouse. This is what interests me from the psychological thing. So maybe I'll put a poll up or something. I was doing polls before for different serial killers you want. I'll put a poll up, and maybe instead of looking at individual serial killers, we can look at disorganized versus organized, or different things like that. We could break it down. The killer types. But I'm going to get out of here. Go check out Frank Meister, the man with the scoop. I don't know if Kristen's with him tonight or not. Hopefully she is. Iced tea time out of a box. If you see me in Delphi in April, I'm going to have iced teas to give you. I'm going to say tentacles, and have a great week. Happy St. Patrick's Day if I don't talk to you, even if you ain't Irish. And even if St. Patrick's Day until next week. I'll see you before then. Coach Kev out.